Welcome to the Living in a Fantasy World podcast. Today we are going to look at a preview of the 22-23 season from a fantasy football perspective, starting off with new rules. So if we look at the usual chips that I'm sure you regular players will be familiar with, we've got bench boost, free hit, triple captain and wildcard. The wildcard chip will be used twice, once before the World Cup, mid-November, and a second chip post the World Cup from the 26th of December. Now, the big one to look out for here is this season, during the World Cup, we have unlimited free transfers that can be made. So in effect, we've got three wildcards, one before the World Cup, one during, and one after. So bear that in mind with your team selections. Moving on, I wanted to talk about most selected players in the game currently. So these are the players that teams that have already been picked have top rated. So number one, we've got Haaland at nearly 65%. New to the Premier League. Could be a risk to go with him, you could argue, but also could be a risk to not have him should he go on fire and on a scoring run. Salah with 265 points, the top scorer of last season's fantasy game. Understandable with him second. Alexander-Arnold, who gets forward a lot for Liverpool, takes a lot of free kicks, corners. Again, high point scoring, but an expensive buy. Jesus, with his move from City to Arsenal, you'd think he'd be playing most weeks in the centre forward position, 50% nearly owned. Perisic, classed as defender in the game. There's been some debate about is he a midfielder, is he an attacker. Inter last season he played predominantly as left wing back. That's where I think Conte will be playing him. So at $5.5 million for someone classed as a defender who can get a lot of assists and goals, again, providing he can do it in the Premiership, I can understand why players have gone for Perisic. Cancelo James, always up there, goals and assists. Luis Diaz, after his successful second half of the season when he joined Liverpool last year, is up there. Greenwood, you might think, who's Greenwood? He plays for Leeds. I say play, doesn't really play too often, but he's got nearly 28% picked, mainly because of his cost of just $4.5 million. Son, as the second highest scorer of last season, points-wise, is only owned by 26%, which 1 in 4 got him. Possibly thought it could be higher, but I'd imagine people are trying to get Haaland and Salah in. So they're your top players. So we'll move on now to bargain buys. Now, a couple of these are here actually already, and then there's a couple more differentials that aren't as popularly owned that I'll go through as well. So Pedro Neto, classed as a midfielder in the game, plays up front or off the striker for Wolves. Injured a lot last season, hence why his points were so low. At only $5.5 million, I can see why people are putting him in as a bargain buy at 22.6%. Bruno from Newcastle, signed in January last year, didn't get into the team straight away. Last few games, played regular, started assisting, started scoring. So again, at $6 million, another cheap buy. With Newcastle starting at home to Notts Forest, potentially a game where he could point score. Similarly with Newcastle, Kieran Trippier, low point score, was injured a lot after signing from January, takes free kicks, possible goals, possible assists. So another one at $5 million that you could think about. And then further down, Martinelli at 6%, nearly 15% owned, at $6 million. Plays left wing for Arsenal, possibly some rotation with Smith Rowe, Nketiah, Jesus maybe. But when he plays, he has got it in him to point score, got 110 last year. And then another one I wanted to highlight was Andreas Pereira, currently United, strong links that he's signing for Fulham. Only $4.5 million. If you need a cheap player, possibly someone to get in, will play most weeks, I would imagine. If you want to be really brave, another relatively cheap buy for somebody classed as a midfielder that could play as a forward. Marcus Rashford, only 6.5 million. Poor season last year. Will he prosper under new management in Ten Hag? That's a brief pre-season preview. Got roughly 4 weeks to the start of the season. Get your teams in. Welcome to the Living in a Fantasy World podcast. There'll be a video each week previewing the coming game week. Hope you enjoyed. Feel free to subscribe, add your comments, and good luck for the season ahead. All the best.